In my first hours with this game, 3 words kept cropping up in my head. Previously reserved only for Breath of the Wild. But when I played through the Rito's regional phenomena, I found certainty in the truth of those 3 words. New favorite game. Halfway up the chain of Sky Islands, the love I had for this game morphed into something bigger. Deeply treasured is the only way I can describe how I regard Tears of the Kingdom. And today I want to look at the magnificent quest that convinced me of this. My goal is to break apart the music into building blocks of colors and ideas and references and show how they all get used to paint an incredible image of the journey. Let's figure out how all this gets combined with a story and game design to make for one of the most thrilling, spectacle-ridden boss fights we've ever seen. Spoilers up ahead! Specifically, the entire Rito phenomena. Go play it if you haven't, then come back. Experiencing it for the first time is something I wish I could do. Since there is so much to cover, I'm going to do a moment-by-moment breakdown of each portion of this quest, with little interspersing notes in between. The building blocks are woven through each step of this journey, and though I've marked each of them out into chapters, I assure you there is great detail and value even in the most silent and mundane parts. Chapter 1. The Ascent. We leave the safety of relatively close ground, and we take to the Sky Islands to find the source of these raging blizzards. The first thing we hear is just like the wind. It's a heavily EQ'd orchestral ostinato, a musical idea that is persistently repeated, as if there is a great swell of sound, a great beast, barely contained for the time being. This soft and meandering sound with no stable pitch sounds like the beginning threats of a bitter, bitter gale. The only thing that punctuates this blanket of sound is a hyoshi. It's used in traditional Japanese theaters to announce the beginning of a show, parallel to the beginning of our journey up towards Stormwind Ark. Within the theater, the hyoshigi is also employed to heighten drama and uncertainty when those arise. It also gets used in sumo wrestling right before wrestlers enter the ring to signify an impending fight. One last rare use case is in residential areas where patrolmen use it to warn people of incoming dangers. It's saying, "Be alert. There's trouble up ahead." The hyoshigi and other woodblock instruments are an incredibly piercing sound, played often in orchestral or noisy, crowded settings, able to punctuate through the sound of 100 musicians or more. It's a sharp sound to complement the sharp winds you now feel, with no cover to buffer them anymore. Then comes the piano not long after. It plays notes that jump large intervals, like the big gaps between Sky Islands we're crossing, only attainable thanks to Tulin. Not just that, but then comes a much bigger gap between the 2 hands when bass notes strike. The islands are getting further and further apart. To follow is a new pattern, which really sounds a lot like stair-stepping, higher and higher up, with a lowered repetition just after it as Tulin tags along behind you, following in your footsteps. After a few more gaps have been crossed, the range widens to reveal the monster behind the curtain. Low woodwinds unveil themselves, and with their sound on full display, the strings find the courage to erupt into the Tempest motif. The Tempest motif is a sequence of tremolo chromatic notes relegated to the string section. This motion, played with a long range up and down, sounds like powerful gusts, tossing you every which way. We first heard this motif in Rito Village's eerie Frozen track. I have a whole video discussing the intricacies and tragedy of that piece, as well as the first appearance of this Tempest theme. Go check it out! The first instance here holds the notes G3 to C4, then down to E3. Already a much more threatening and wider run than anything we heard in the village. The second time, it's playing E flat 4 up to C5. Uh-oh! Now the upper strings are getting involved. Meanwhile, the low strings have a very cool melody. Echoing back to the piano's stepwise motions earlier. But it's taunting, this time with the melody tumbling back down to the starting note and far below it, almost as if to scoff at the player. You're not going to make it. Now that the low strings have said their piece, the third time sees the Tempest starting at E3. Now with the entire string section going up to F sharp 4, down to A3, up to C5. The Tempest isn't taking its time at all, growing and surging in speed and ferocity, cold with indifference. By this point, more wind instruments are kicking in too as the wind itself picks up to a near splintering point. We progress further and now the strings have started playing a pulse, as if to echo the single-mindedness of Link and Tulin as they push through the raging, painful blizzard. The piano comes back with its stepwise motion to complement this. It's unrelenting, like a mantra that bears the words, "You've made it this far. Keep going." Now, the low brass introduces a new building block. A melody from the attack on Va Meadow, this journey holding the same lethal danger that Revali faced 100 years ago. This entire Sky Island section is based, I believe, on zones of detection. It's not solely altitude checks, or else you'd hear it accidentally while exploring outside the quest. I'm guessing it's large spheres to allow for the music to not cut out if a player moves in strange ways or misses the landing. These are zones surrounding the Sky Islands that are coded to trigger various stages of the track that blend seamlessly together thanks to the fragmented nature of the tune. I wish I could send my save file back in time and figure out the technical intricacies of how they did this adapted music. The zones are also used to rebalance the mix of sounds you hear. The closer you get to the storm cloud, the more the SNX layers of wind overtake any music, even any noises you make. The Tempest becomes truly all-encompassing as it drowns the sound of your weapons, your feet, and any thoughts in your head. With the winds crashing into you, you take a deep breath, steel yourself, and you take a running leap onto the final sail, catapulting yourself into the hurricane ahead. I just want to take a moment of appreciation for the sheer scale of this upwards trek. As you work towards any goal, learn or do anything, the first few steps see the most progress. But as you get further along in your journey, you have to put in more work, leap bigger bounds to see the same progress, and we see that reflected in the game. The first islands are but a glide away, and then you start needing to use Tulin's gusts, and then the power of Ascent. After one such use, we get introduced to Stormwind boats. They all have single sails that trampoline you far into the skies, allowing you to reach even higher platforms. Then, they expand on this jump too, by giving you Stormwind ships that are 4 times bigger than the boats from earlier. These sails catapult you, and I absolutely love the long hang time of the animation at the bottom of Link sinking in. It's so slow, and the sound it makes is so much lower than that of the smaller boats. All of this contributes to such scale, as every step the game demands of you has you traveling further and faster. As a reward for overcoming the increasingly higher bars, the game sees you jumping off 2 final trampolines. Your screen flashes white as you get flung higher up than you've ever been before. And when it fades, the air is all of a sudden clear. You've surpassed the altitude of the storm cloud entirely, and your ears and your eyes are relieved with clarity of sound and sight. You take in the view of the world around you, seen from a beautiful vantage point, before surging into the eye of the storm and diving straight down. Chapter 2, The Skydive. The skydiving portion opens with a scooped note, B to C sharp, and it's like the monster behind the curtain is bellowing, crying out, trying to force its way to freedom as its release becomes ever more imminent. The Stormwind Ark is visible at last in all its glory. Can you believe that they wrote a track specifically for diving in this one hole in the sky? We hear it for seconds in a playthrough of 100 hours, if not hundreds of hours, but it just goes to show how much care and attention to detail went into this game. God, I love it! Anyway, with the ice-laden wind swept out of your eyes, your world comes into color once more, and you begin to see all that the clouds were obscuring. While the piano plays sextuplet 16th notes, the high woodwinds are playing 30-second notes, giving off such speed and urgency. The overlapping of these two parts creates said color and sparkle in the music. Cellos and basses play in 8th note pedal tone to add to the high energy of the dive. The rest of the orchestra is playing a slower half-note melody. It's big jumps, consisting of fourths and fifths like earlier, with the loose bits of piano that would punctuate the silence. As you land, it all slows down. The drony notes of the low strings and super quick, colorful parts come to a rest. You've made it. Chapter 3, The Wind Temple. We hear that dampened orchestra once more. It's very lonely yet again because you're in a place people haven't gone to in millennia. It's made clear that you must activate 5 terminals before you may proceed. The music starts off empty once more, urging you to explore and unveil this mystery. Glockenspiel starts things off as well as the soprano recorder, both very cutting sounds to represent the thin, cold air of such an immensely high altitude. An accordion also slips into the soundscape, the instrument we heard Kass play. My sweet, we miss you so. By the way, it was brought to my attention that Kass's theme is tied to Rito Village's song, just like Tulin's Sage Sound. His theme follows the first 3 notes of the Rito's home track. I think it's such a sweet touch that even though he's a traveling musician, he takes and incorporates a piece of home into every tune he plays. We don't see him in Tears of the Kingdom, as perhaps he's traveling through other kingdoms, but I like to think he's out there somewhere, brightening the days of weary travelers and villagers with embellishments on his favorite tunes from way back home. By the way, what a perfect instrument to give a Rito bard, because while it bears resemblance to a piano on one side, its sound is made via bellows. Bellows that blow air through a reed on the inner frame as if it's a love child of a piano and a wind instrument. A perfect choice for the people that hold such command over the air.
Hey! My friend and I would really like to see this channel reach 50,000 subscribers. She says it's a long shot, but I believe in us. In return, you get heartfelt video essays, so hit that button and yell!
Tulin, that's a B.
Oh, hit that button and bell!
With one fan unlocked, things pick up a little more. The piano plucks a familiar melody, referencing the attack on Va Meadow, and the snare drum has a roll that punctuates the downbeat on occasion. It sounds militaristic, but not yet urgent. Still lots of space between the notes. But with 2 fans, that urgency is heightened with swells of string tremolos and much more dense parts for the snare, shaker, and the piano. We see that as the terminals get unlocked and the beast gets closer to becoming unchained, more of the silence present in the tracks is taken over. The instruments bleed into the barren, dampened soundscape, and with the 3rd fan activated, the imminent danger soars from the back of our minds straight into sight. Now, the whole orchestra is audible. The strings play a very confident minor second pattern, an interval often used to indicate fear and fast approaching danger in music. This was introduced to us in the Divine Beast Va Meadow Dungeon track. It's also the first we hear of the creepy choir samples found all over Tears of the Kingdom's music. While the strings persist in their pattern, we hear a solo oboe play a snippet of Revali's theme. But halfway through it contorts. It transforms chillingly. Your stomach drops as the melody drops further down than it should. It doesn't soar as high as it did before. It doesn't end with open wistfulness. It curls tighter in on itself, and so does your gut. This is the music telling you, Link, don't let what happened to Revali happen to Tulin. He's just a kid, still growing up, and we see so much of ourselves in him. By the way, I have a video going over the narrative importance of Tulin's sage sound effect and how it's tied to his coming-of-age story. Go watch it, I promise it'll make this hit harder. As if to drive this point home, the melody now shifts to Tulin's theme. But once again, a depraved version of it. Do not let any harm come to this precious boy. Through all this pressure, you soldier on, fighting constructs and exploring every nook and cranny of the Ark. When the fourth terminal is activated, the musical ideas explored up until this point become even more well-defined. Rich, even. The stepwise motion we heard in the piano long ago at the beginning of this track is present now, as steadily repeating 16th notes in the low strings. This is also a reference to the low string part in the track Attacking Va Meadow from the previous game. While the right hand of the piano doubles the string part, the left hand is playing the root note G over and over. This pedal point gives us a bit of sure footing, finally, as the Ark unravels around us. The music has gained confidence, and so have we. Revali's theme is played yet again, but this time it's not a solo oboe cutting through the orchestra, doing all the heavy lifting itself. No, the oboe is accompanied by the rest of the woodwinds. Even the strings joining in the effort, all the instruments of various textures, doubling, tripling, quadrupling this melody. It takes it from a thin, flimsy melody held together by Elmer's glue and sheer will, to one that is absolutely sure of itself. It's bolstered with the concrete strength of companionship, because this time Link is with each of the champions as they tackle the regional phenomena. We're here with Tulin. He doesn't have to do this alone. So this time, the melody doesn't twist halfway. It stays true to the original. Hopeful. Along with that companionship, both in the music and in the game, there's a sure sign of optimism, with the tonic chord erupting from a minor to a major chord, reaching for the skies with a bright arpeggiation through the ranges. The strings underneath again move to support the new, momentarily major harmony. We also saw the same harmonic idea in the Attacking Va Meadow track. I love the sound of a major tonic in a minor key. It sounds like triumph against a world of strife, hope within a sea of despair. There's another sweet callback to the very beginning of Revali's theme. Before the melody decidedly settles on the dark, menacing tone of the attack on Va Meadow. And also, there is a wildly cool texture played by either a recorder or a wood flute, descending chromatics that sound just like a bird call. Through a careful eye and a steady bow, you're able to unlock all the terminals with Best Bird Boy, and together, you make your way to the main terminal. You hold out your hand, and... And there it is! The part we've been waiting for, the culmination of everything we've worked for, everything we've overcome. Just one more hurdle to jump. There are 2 phases of the Colgera battle, each with 3 separate parts that it transitions between, for each of the 3 discs that you shatter. The scale of this boss fight arena dwarfs the Stormwind Ark itself. The ship is but a pockmark compared to the sheer scale of the beast that has emerged from it. This is arguably one of the biggest bosses in Zelda games, and its track feels huge too. It's brimming with energy, the entire range put to work. The glockenspiel, highlighting the stepwise pattern in the upper range, the same soprano recorder we heard earlier, soars back in, and it leads the melody of this battle with clarity and strength despite its small stature. After a beautiful ornamental section of turns from the piano and piccolo that sounds just like falling through the sky and ascending back up, as you're likely doing in this fight, the brass and choir blare onto the soundstage. I love that the vocalists start off by singing, wah. Talk about fullness, immense, threatening scale. Not only do we have a full orchestra, we have a full choir too. As you ascend higher yet into the sky, those stepwise notes disappear from the low strings. They fall off. The sound begins to float more in the mid-high range as you float on up, the strings playing a steady quarter note pattern. You're being held aloft, but by the fabric of your glider alone. The Tempest motif comes back into the music with a vengeance, the very one we first heard tiny glimpses of in Rito Village. Then in the Rising Island chain, now fully unleashed. Stamina is handled with one significant change in this fight that does so much to keep the momentum strong. Usually, if you run out of stamina, you fall, given a bit of grace at the end to open your paraglider. But you have to catch your breath afterwards. They took out this mechanic entirely, making it so that you do break into a fall once you run out of your meter. But you can regain full stamina instantly without touching down. This does wonders to help keep uptime high in a boss fight so far up in the sky. Awarding the player this extra mobility makes them feel powerful in a time when they most need it, but it also helps spin the fact that the gusts and the updrafts are immense too, so strong as to suspend Link as he regains his strength. It's yet another small but meaningful adjustment that contributes to the scale of this fight. Sidebar, I really searched for my finest spyglasses and combs to finding a link to the Molgera theme, but I couldn't find much outside of these 2 stretch series, so have this, and please don't leave any comments going like, "Raw, you forgot the Molgera Connection." Okay, thank you, bye! Once you've broken the first of Colgera's membranes, the urgency in the percussion starts to pick up. The Japanese wood flute, the shakuhachi, joins in to sing the main melody now. The sound of this instrument is more airy than any of the instruments we've heard so far, which is perfect. The gusts are only getting stronger from here. The strings sail into the main melody of the Colgera, fast-moving with snapping 8th and 16th notes. The melody often gets the most emphasis on beats 2.5 and on beat 4, which is strange. In 4/4 time, usually, beat 1 is the strongest. Beat 3 is also quite strong, but beat 2 is weaker, and 4 is the weakest. These are the default, and this rule exists to help musicians make choices on when to play loudly, softly, or in between, because if every note was the same volume, then it would be very difficult to listen to. But by accenting where they do, they throw us off. The snare drums and toms are playing an intricate part that contributes to this, especially with the syncopation present in the toms. This makes it so that the emphasis always falls earlier than your ears expect it to. You get the cymbal crash on beat 1, but the strength that should come in on beat 3 is shifted early to 2.5. And so you expect the next hit on beat 1 again, but you fool! It came early on beat 4. And this continues throughout the entire phrase. When rhythmic conventions are toyed with like this, they're a joy to listen to because of how much they confuse the ear. This kind of rhythmic play keeps you on your toes. It sounds unfamiliar, otherworldly almost, because this is, after all, a beast of myth and legend that you're facing. To further that otherworldly trait, the Zonai choir comes in, the creepy vocal samples compounding on the previous effect. You don't know what you're up against. All you can do is keep on moving. Also, Tulin's Powers sound effect lingers so much longer here in this boss fight than it ever does outside it. Remember that fierce loyalty that the game instills in you towards this bird boy? The protectiveness you feel over him, the appreciation you have for his power every time you glide just a little too shy of the next island. It's guaranteed that he feels the same after all you've been through and how much he clearly looks up to you. And so, he's willing to fight tooth and nail, beak and talon, to make sure no harm befalls you. With the expansive scale of the arena and how much the Colgera threatens to swallow Linkhole, Tulin's wings are on overdrive. His gusts send you much further than they normally would, and the sound effects spearheading the winds changes to match. This not only endears you to him even more, but it also helps to match the scale of the fight and gets you to where you need to go. Also, the way that he expresses concern if and when you do get hit is so sweet. I cannot. It makes this fight feel so alive! The strings slip away from the main melody once you break apart the second disc. The orchestra has pulled back. I wonder why. But in its stead, the soprano recorder now holds the mantle of the melody, and it plays on strong. And then could not handle it when I first reached this part. I had to pause and just sit there, my jaw struck dumb with awe. How beautiful, how utterly soul-bendingly gorgeous, not for how wonderful this melody is in its new context, but for all that it says. We have to think about why they decided to transplant this part of the Rito track into the Colgera theme. Rito Village's theme is a beautiful blend of major, minor modality, constantly shifting between the two. It's in part why this track is a fan favorite, how it can have such a clean melody, but such complex undertones of both melancholy, wistfulness, as well as hope and warmth. This track can't spend 3 bars without dipping into a relative key or straight up modulating to a new one entirely. So why not take something from a short minor section of the Rito track to pair with this boss theme that's in a minor key? I was curious, and so I made a mock-up. But even though that sounds cool, it just doesn't hit as hard as the original, because I think they chose the perfect part to implement. What defines the Rito? Who are they? In Wind Waker, they evolved from the Zora after a turn of cataclysmic events that had the entirety of Hyrule flooded with dangerous, monster-ridden waters. The fish of the seas died out, forcing Zora to move up onto land to survive. Some suggest it was divine intervention that transformed them, but either way, regardless of which timeline you look at, the Rito have known a history of strife, and yet they persist. They are one of the shortest lived races in Hyrule, but they learn and spin songs to keep their history and legends alive. They are the definition of what it means to be strong and have kind hearts in hard times. And what better portion of their song to represent that with than the biggest, most longest triumphant stretch that we hear? This phrase, unlike all that came before it, doesn't switch between minor and major modality like its life depended on it. It stays solidly in A-flat major for a solid 9 bars, or arguably more, the most harmonically sweet and also powerful and steady of the entire track. The harmony borrows boldly from outside its key, ventures out into the spicy unknown, knowing that it will find its way back into the stability of its home key in no time. It gives it incredible harmonic color as it dares to venture into places of dissonance, of discomfort, to then resolve them. It's saying, we'll venture into the storm and we'll be stronger for it. The melodic implications are fitting too. Look at what happens direction-wise with the notes. Say, we take A-flat as the baseline, home root note of A-flat major. Some years, the Ritos soar well above that line, thriving and growing, but some years, hardship befalls them. Their wings can't take them as far, and so they dip below the line, operating with less food, less comfort, more strain. But each and every time they manage to pull through together, and before long they take to the skies once more. And so now, back to the Colgera, we understand why they use this part of the Rito track. But one more question remains. Why now? This melody starts to play when you've broken through 2 out of 3 of Colgera's segments. At this point, you're beginning to realize that this monstrous creature is not infallible. As sharp as its pincers and spikes are, you've already dented its vitality greatly. You're so close to restoring a good, hopefully long period of peace for the Rito, and though they can't be physically there to support you and Tulin, you carry their song with you. The entire orchestra and choir joins into this melody, a grandiose team effort of a tune for the grand team effort Link and Tulin are giving. You feel the shake of the music in your bones, in your heart, and it's speaking to you.
Look at all that we've survived. Look at how we continue to thrive. Together there's nothing we can't do. Finish this, Link. We're right here with you.
With one more flurry of wings, we shoot right through the last membrane of the Colgera. It wails in rage, in pain, and disappears into a sling of pure void. All is quiet for a moment before it surges out through another portal, this time angrier and stronger. The past 3 phases have all introduced key changes as a way of both engaging the listener but also telling a fantastic story, the stakes rising as the keys themselves transpose upwards. Phase 1A started in B minor. The next phase rise to D minor, and then the last rose to G sharp minor. These outline a diminished 7th chord, a most violent chord, perfect to represent our progress as we literally carve away portions of the Colgera's body. In phase 2, when Colgera is even more enraged and has started spinning ice-laden cyclones our way, the music shows that through its key. It's the only big differentiator in between the music of phase 1 and 2. Each subphase is moved a semitone up, giving it a subtle increase in energy, one that you feel more than you hear. But working in tandem with Tulin, you're both able to avoid any significant harm. You've already done it before, and you've learned so much on this journey, so together, you sail through the nerve bundles of this beast, through its heart, one last time. It wails and curls with the last of its lifeblood before falling limp, bursting at the seams with gloom. It succumbs to pure light. And when we can see again, the skies are decorated with stardust. The storm cloud dissipates, with Colgera no longer around to spin it, and a blue, warm sky is revealed. Spires of ice melt away to reveal a secret stone at the center of Stormwind Ark. After collecting our heart container, we watch on with great pride as Tulin speaks to the Wind Sage of old, learns of his history through a first-hand recount of the mission now passed on to him. He responds with utter excitement and without the slightest hesitation takes on the secret stone and all the responsibility that lays within it. The music that plays as the secret stone bonds to him is just so sweet, full of light and hope. It's entirely in D major, and the melody leaps and soars, sweeping well over 2 octaves. Its energy and joy hard to contain. It's by far the most pure track tied to the Rito, unblemished by tragedy, by loss. Ganondorf miscalculated, thinking that each of the sages would tackle their own phenomena solo, that the beast he summoned would be enough to put an end to them. But they weren't alone. We make it through, together with Tulin, and so, this tall tale ends triumphant. Remember how I said that Tulin's sage sound in C sharp minor is indicative of him struggling to let others in and connect with his community, falling down the same path as Revali? His actual theme being a step above shows that he was able to overcome it, and his song relishes in all the joy and safety and success that comes with such a crucial lesson well learned. The duo rush back to Rito Village to share the good news, but the camera first pans to Teba, witnessing a change in the winds. Teba, who has surely been beside himself with silent worry about the fate of his son, feels the harsh winds lift and the snow at his talons melt. The sun blazes through now clear skies, making easy work of the snow and ice engulfing Rito Village. We get to watch in real time as the Arctic spell tormenting our feathered friends finally fades away. The people once more take to the skies and feel the sun on their wings as their home sparkles below them with newfound warmth. Our duo makes it back home, and with it, the sun-kissed Rito theme comes back too. As if all of that wasn't enough satisfaction, we see Teba reward Tulin with his very own treasured bow. Tulin's taken aback, but his dad assures him that he recognizes his little boy's grown up and he's a warrior worthy of it now. He's matured now that he recognizes the value of community and collaboration. That recognition he so desperately wanted all this time is now given to him in spades. This game did such an incredible job with this quest especially. The way that they make your heart bleed with the frozen village, the way your loyalty to the Rito gets concentrated into and emboldened by a young Rito warrior to set you off on this journey. A journey that sows awe and spectacle just like a beautifully written story would, by setting up seedlings of ideas only to have them sprout, then flourish in full force in perfectly timed moments. Tiny threads of the Tempest theme turn into a howling storm by the end. Gingerly steps transform into a competent dance, and musical mementos urge us to remember. Think of the great victory against Va Meadow. Be wary of the lone wolf approach that weighed so heavily on Rivali. And most of all, when the biting cold seeps closest to your core, when you feel your energy most sapped by these trials, remember your friends, your community, your loved ones. They are a village behind you who see you, adore you, and are cheering you on. With all that, combined with Tears of the Kingdom's impeccable game design, engaging pacing, and ungodly scale, it's no wonder that this quest is one of the most exciting and jaw-dropping adventures I've experienced. All this is how the Rito phenomena blows you away. Thank you so much for watching. I love this quest so dearly, and I hope my words were able to shed some insight on why so many of us look to this portion of the game with incredible fondness. Share it with a friend and tell me, what were your favorite parts? I'm so very grateful for the love my first 2 videos received. I've read every comment, and the support and insight you all left makes me thankful to my core. This wraps up everything I wanted to cover regarding Tears of the Kingdom. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not done with this game by a long shot. We're just at a bit of a fork in the road. I've seen all your suggestions so far, but do let me know what you'd like to see me cover next. I am very easily swayed. You are a hero for making it to the end of this monstrous video. And speaking of heroes, I'd like to thank my patrons. Patreon is the best way to support creators like me in a time when platforms can be really unstable. And by pledging there, you gain access to early viewing of videos as well as behind the scenes content and a special Discord role and a secret channel. I'm excited to see what you have to say, and I'm excited for what the future holds. I'll see you in the next one. Mwah, mwah.